your serious face on. We're pretty close here, huh?
Close?
Yeah. Do you think we should be closer?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Okay.
How's up?
Let's get nice and close. You look great today.
You too.
Thank you. Thank you. I have with me an outstanding guest. We have with us Benjamin J. What's the J for?
James.
Benjamin James Lough. He is the Dean and Professor at the School of Social Work at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Ben is also the Director of Social Innovation at Geese College of Business and a licensed therapist, so he might end up interviewing me and giving me some advice. He received his PhD from Washington University in St. Louis, cool, and his bachelor's and master's in social work at Brigham Young University, which is in Utah. Cool. Prior to joining the University of Illinois, he was a senior researcher at the Volunteer Knowledge and Innovation section at the United Nations Volunteer in Bonn, Germany. He teaches courses on nonprofit management, social enterprise, and social entrepreneurship. His research examines the practices of transnational voluntary organizations that promote community development and social innovation. Dean Lough is working with the United States Aid for International Development to create a global mental health policy. He also continues to study the comparative advantages of hybrid social purpose organizations over traditional nonprofits. Oof, man, you're so legit. I'm running out of breath here. He has been my faculty partner for the iVenture Accelerator in the past and is a direct partner now through Illinois Social Innovation, a campus-wide initiative that trains and convenes an inclusive network of changemakers to co-create innovative solutions for a more just and equitable society. He is also someone I turn to in times of crisis, helping me clear my mind, think about myself, he's really good at that, and strategically challenging my assumptions and initiatives. You've been a great mentor and friend to me. Welcome to the show, Dean Lough.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here, Manu. Thanks for the invitation.
And who's joining us right here on the couch?
I've got my little nugget, my Vizsla dog, Rumi, who's 8 months old, and she is finally falling asleep, so hopefully she won't be creating any background noise today.
Yeah, hopefully don't have any ruckus. I've never seen her sit. Oh, there she is.
She's just getting comfortable.
Okay. So you've done quite a bit, and I just want to start off with like a very interesting question, which is, you were jailed in Nepal.
You remember that?
How did this happen? Why did this happen? Can you give us some context into this?
Yeah, my buddy and I were going on an Asian trip. This is back with pre-student days when finances were pretty tight. So we got some budget airlines to fly into Bombay. From Bombay, we were going to go up to Varanasi and then up through Nepal and then continue on a journey through China. And we ended up walking across the borders pretty late at night, and the border guard was sleeping. So we dumbly didn't wake him up. I don't know why. They usually will stamp your passport with a little entry stamp. But as we got ready to start thinking about eventually having to leave the country, we got a little concerned that we didn't have an entry stamp. So I went to the consulate? The consulate in Nepal. And they're very corrupt there. They're a really corrupt system. I knew that. But I was also young, and I was stupid enough to think I would change the system. I've since learned, don't try to change the system. Just go with it. But at the time, I was pretty frustrated with the guy who I basically just wanted him to give me a stamp in my passport to say I came into the country. There's a big sign that says in big letters, come in, we'll give you a stamp. Don't worry. Don't pay anybody any money. So they're clearly trying to stamp out corruption in this country. And I thought I would stand on principle and not give them any money. So I ended up, a few days kind of sitting there, I think 2 days actually, just kind of waiting in the office for them to stamp my passport. They kept giving me all this run around, say they didn't have this and that, needed a fax, whatever. So at the end of the second day, the fax came in, and I had it. I was just really frustrated. And I don't lose my temper often, but I kind of lost my temper, started yelling, grabbed my passport, kind of went up. Yeah, I knew his boss was on the floor above, so I decided I would go up with my passport and all this documentation that I clearly had to his boss, and kind of because I thought it was just this guy, Anyway, his boss basically took me to town. He's like, "Let me let me get this right. You're in our country illegally. You yelled at my employees. you think you're gonna, anyway. So he was right. I was wrong. They basically put me in jail for a little time to cool off. And it ended up being, I think, $60 that I had to pay to get out of jail. But that was my first lesson in kind of like, it's not my first lesson. I've been in jail a couple times before in Ukraine, which is a different story. But this was the first time that I deserved it. So yeah, I was there, paid $60, got out eventually, and we made it up to China.
I see. So you've been on jails in 2 different continents?
Maybe more.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cool. Well, I'm glad you're staying out of trouble now. Hopefully. What do you do now?
So now I'm the dean of the School of Social Work and a professor. So part of that role involves leading the school, being in charge of finances, but I also do still professorial work. So you mentioned the work that I'm doing with USAID, USAID. So I'm continuing to do some consultancy work with them, also writing, continuing on that project. But most of my work involves both internal and external engagement with the school, working with the university to make sure the school is contributing to the university's mission, meaning research, teaching, and service, but also working with the school externally to make sure that our school is really meeting the needs of our profession and training students to be successful social workers as they graduate.
So how does one get from being jailed in multiple continents to this position? I mean, that's such an interesting...
Yeah, actually, I think that's a lot of the life experience that contributes to people being able to be resilient, I think a lot of what I owe to both my leadership skills, but also to my ability to respond to crises, which I use both in my social work profession, but also a lot in the dean position. I learned through difficult situations, and some of that is going abroad, putting yourself in situations that are new to you, getting outside your comfort zone, having to respond to things pretty quickly in the moment that you wouldn't have necessarily planned for. So I think a lot of the skills that I learned abroad, not always about being in jail, but even just engaging with people in different situations, different cultures, has helped me to be responsive to the needs of the students, faculty, the university. So I think it's prepared me well in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. So, I have a question about that, and I'm going to read something that I believe you said, which is, you said, "I'm driven by the belief that people have the power to change the world. Much of my work aims to inspire and empower people to recognize their potential and take action to create spaces that foster innovation, collaboration, and social impact. Whether through volunteering in our communities or by launching a social enterprise, I believe people have the capacity to drive change."
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And you talked about, your role in serving the mission of the campus. We talked about what you do. Why did you decide to take this role?
So this would be a long roundabout way to get around it probably, but I do have a belief that people can change the world, specifically that we can do pretty much whatever we want. And part of that is, maybe being American and having opportunity that a lot of people don't have. I did live abroad and saw a lot of people who didn't have the kinds of opportunity that I had. But I remember a moment in college, I think it was my sophomore year, walking along the icy roads of Rexburg, Idaho, and having this thought, like, I can do whatever I want. With I really had a lot of efficacy that I could do whatever I wanted. And generally, I believe, especially in the U.S., we can really make change. We have a lot of opportunity, a lot of capacity to make change. So a lot of that quote that I mentioned comes from just a real strong belief in both my own self-efficacy, but the efficacy of people to create change. A lot of them just need the inspiration or the knowledge to do it, but I think we have a lot of opportunity. What inspired me to do this position, again, maybe hubris that I could do it and it was a good fit for me, but I think also another part of my philosophy is really that moving towards difficulty is the way we change and grow. And a lot of that desire to create change is an acknowledgement that change doesn't happen without disruption, without difficulty, without moving towards things that scare you. If we're complacent and stay in spaces that are safe, that we feel good in, we're not going to change much. You know this. You're a big buff dude, so you know how it.
For the record, I am wearing sleeves right now.
No, you're not. Yeah, it just takes effort to get outside your comfort zone and to push yourself. But it's only through that you can kind of grow. So I took this role on mostly because it was a learning opportunity and because I had a chance to grow and to hopefully learn a few things. I knew it would challenge me, but I also had the belief that I could do it. And so I think that combination of opportunity, really wanting to grow, I have a very strong learning kind of growth mindset, and knowing that this position would push me, I think were the catalysts for me taking it on.
Yeah. So just quick follow up there. It's about a year into the deanship now?
A year and 2 months. Yep.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Yeah, just for the audience, whoever's listening, mainly just my mom. We gave Ben a cheesecake with a candle. For his birthday.
That's great. Thank you for that. That was a good cheesecake, by the way.
It looked really good. And it was from Bake Lab.
Super tasty.
What have you learned? What's been challenging this year? How have you grown?
Yeah, the biggest pieces have probably been around personnel issues. So, much of life's challenges are just people. So the easy parts for me are the systems, the organization itself, the finances, like a lot of the operational pieces that people struggle with maybe. Like I think I have experience in and have taught in those spaces for a while, so they feel pretty comfortable to me. People are unpredictable, so you never quite know what's coming your way. We tend to see things, all of us, from very different perspectives. So trying to get people who are quite strong-willed, so faculty, as you know, are very, very accomplished folks, very strong-willed. Most of them are entrepreneurs in their own right, entrepreneurs of ideas. So they have very strong beliefs in what they're trying to do. So being able to bring those people together on a common mission is always a challenge. And from a cultural lens, recognizing that they all see things from a very different perspective. There's a lot of communication that has to happen. And I think I'm not always great at communicating. So I think I've learned that I really need to spend time communicating my intentions, my motivations, my beliefs, the way I see the world, just to get people around the same table now who are sometimes radically different thinkers. So that's probably the biggest pot of learning.
Yeah. I mean, in essence, you're a servant leader, right?
I think so. Yeah. I do tend to take that lens.
Yeah. No, I agree. People are simultaneously the most rewarding and the most challenging aspect, at least of my job, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just communication there's so many layers to it. Mm-hmm. One thing can mean totally different things to two different people. Managing people, setting expectations, over-communicating. I can't imagine it at your level.
Did you say over-communicate? Do you over-communicate sometimes?
No, I'm kind of just straightforward. Like,
yeah.
I'm very blunt and to the point, and I feel like my directions are pretty easy to understand. Mm-hmm. But then
sometimes you figure out they're not,
and it's really all on you. At least I take it all on me because I feel like I can always communicate better.
Yeah.
I mean, they're looking at me for direction, so.
Yeah, it's a big responsibility, right?
Yeah.
And one of the weaknesses I have really is around that kind of inspirational piece. Some people are really good at being inspirational leaders, dynamic. Yeah, it's not really me. It's not really me. I'm more of a behind-the-scenes kind of a guy. So those are some of the pieces I've definitely tried to scale up and learn. I'm still not good at it. I don't really care to do it, but I know that it needs to happen sometimes.
Yeah.
If people want to be inspired, they want to be moved.
I feel like that's the side I actually enjoy.
You are good at that. That's why you like it, because you're good at it.
I like that side.
Yeah.
Just the big speeches and wear a nice suit and just say some stuff.
Well, you worked hard to figure that piece out too.
Yeah.
Right? That didn't come natural, I'm sure.
It did not. It was very methodical. I think the parts that I struggle with are probably more perhaps just laying off the gas. I feel like not everyone's like always an A player in every aspect. Like I'm not an A player in every aspect. So just figuring out how to work with different types of people with different strengths and not being so hard on everyone, including myself.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's like I'm pretty intense.
Yeah.
That's like the one word everyone uses to describe me. So I need to chill out a bit then.
I think you have a good balance. I think you have the capacity to chill out when you need to.
Yeah, maybe.
Although I see you more of I see you at work for sure. I've worked with you, but I see you more in the social space too. That's informal.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see you chilling out a lot at work. That's true.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're pretty intense.
Yeah. So like, and some, it just, I prefer to be as professional as possible there. So people always comment on my appearance or my suits. I'll be like, hey, nice suit. I'm like, hey, do you have your sales strategy? Like, I just don't acknowledge it. So I'm just kind of like that, which has its pros and cons.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's super interesting. I am curious with all of this work and all these personalities, is there anything in your mind that's particularly unique about the School of Social Work here?
Hard to know because I've only been here. I mean, I was a student at a couple other schools, but I started here in 2011 and I've only worked here. I will say historically, we have a pretty cohesive, strong faculty. There's always exceptions, about 1 out of 10 people generally in any workplace are kind of misanthropes, they're just like hard to get along with. So we have a couple of those, but I've, again, been in institutions as a student where there's really obvious divisions, there's faculty squabbles, there's really toxic culture. The Midwest, maybe it's the Midwest vibe, I don't know. We have some pretty good faculty, get along pretty well and just kind of do their work. So I feel like that's a big strength of the school. And I've also interacted with faculty in other departments here at the university, and it's not always that case. So maybe it's not the Midwest, maybe it's just the school, but we have a pretty strong faculty that way. But this year has been challenging. I think since COVID, people have had some struggles. We're also hearing a neighbor with a lawnmower coming through, so hopefully that'll show up in the background. Other than that, I think we're a pretty standard school of social work. We focus a lot on mental health practice, so most of our students are getting trained in mental health to be therapists. We have a comparatively small macro concentration, which is leadership, organizational practice, policy, community work, that kind of stuff. 90 plus, maybe 95% of our students want to do mental health practice.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's pretty big group. Certain schools will specialize, of course, in macro or international or whatever, but we stick pretty heavily to the mental health, for good or for bad.
Yeah. Of course, this guy decides to mow his lawn right now.
Yeah,
all day.
Yep,
all day.
Yeah, good job, buddy.
Look who's did I just hear you snore?
Nah,
Who was snoring?
this girl didn't snore.
So dogs, what role have they played in your life?
Big one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've decided pretty much to travel solo. Like, I'm not interested in a relationship, so I think having a couple dogs keep me company, pretty important. I took during my sabbatical, I took 13 months and traveled across the U.S. and Canada. One of my adventures was super fun. Took my 2 dogs with me, and I could not have done it without them, I'm sure. Just having, knowing that I had to get out there every day to, run them, go on hikes, go on the lake. They're very outdoorsy, so just knowing that, I need to get them outside give me a big impetus to basically work in the morning and then go play. But yeah, they definitely keep me company. They're big snugglers, very affectionate dogs. They're usually pretty chill at home and pretty active outside, so they're a good mix. But if you don't get them exercising, they're a pain in the butt. So, yeah, keeps me active.
What's the breed?
Vizslas, Hungarian Vizslas.
Hungarian Vizslas. You get so much attention for these outside.
Yeah.
Everyone stops you.
Yeah, Manu and I went hiking one time at Turkey Run,
and we also did Arizona.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, with his dogs. I remember I think you're kind of annoyed. I was like, what are they? What do you call them? What are their names? Yeah, they get a lot of attention.
You think it's because there's 2 of them?
I think so.
Yeah.
And they're pretty. I mean, they're pretty dogs.
Yeah.
They're cute. They're good girls.
The first time we met was actually during that year. You were zooming it from your van.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's true.
Where all did you go?
Pretty much circumnavigated the U.S. and then went up to Canada. Spent about a month in Ottawa. Otherwise, was pretty much just traveling across the bottom half of Canada, the beautiful parts of Alberta all the way to Quebec. But yeah, basically went all over. I've tried to follow the spring temperatures. So anywhere was around 50, 60 degrees. Probably because I left the dogs in the van.
Mm-hmm.
So it had to be cool enough that they would be happy in there if I'm out running around. But what was your original question about these dogs?
Just like what role they kind of play, and
Yeah.
I think you answered that.
Yeah. There's something else on the sabbatical, but I don't know. Anyway, yeah, they my travel companions throughout that whole little trip, and basically spent anywhere from like noon to evening playing outside every day.
Wow,
It's a good time.
sounds fun.
Yeah.
When's your next sabbatical? I'd like to come.
Man, yeah.
Can you hang out with humans or only four-legged?
I definitely hang out with a lot of humans on my sabbatical.
You do?
Yeah, I'd stop by good friends along the way. I pretty much always stop by buddy's house and then usually convince them and their spouse or with their spouse's ire to like come hang out with me for a weekend. Go climbing, go hiking,
Mm-hmm.
go paddleboarding, whatever.
So you're pretty active.
Pretty active.
What do you do?
In Champaign, mostly paddleboarding, I would say, and climbing. So there's not great outdoor climbing, but we have a gym here, bouldering gym, that I appreciate. Try to go to the YMCA 3 times a week in the morning, work out. But after work, pretty much paddleboarding or bouldering.
So when you say early morning, you mean 5:15 a.m., right? That's when you get there?
Starting at 5:15, yeah. Good workout.
You're up ridiculously early.
Depends on
3, 4 a.m., right?
4:30 usually.
4:30? Okay.
Ish, yeah.
What's the deal? Why early mornings for you, and why early mornings, and why kind of this active lifestyle? You talked a little bit about dogs and how you're trying to grow and challenge yourself professionally. What about these two other aspects?
Yeah, I kind of think that we are our bodies. I mean, we're not separate from our bodies. So, growing up, I grew up Mormon, and there was just a lot of dualism around mind, body, spirit kind of thing. And I kind of realized at some point, like, no, we are just our bodies. Like, that's what, like we have to take care of ourselves. So I think the physical piece is really huge for all of our mental, spiritual, health. So yeah, I do get up pretty early, partly because my body wakes up early. So I do wake up around 4:30, 4:45 every, at least 3 times a week, not every morning. But if I don't, I wake up probably around 5:30 anyway, 5:36 latest, just naturally. So it's not a big sacrifice. I just go to bed a little earlier.
Got it.
Yeah.
And you talked just right now about a little bit about your upbringing and sabbatical kind of insights. At age 17, let me know if this is inaccurate. You left your hometown of Meridian, Idaho, for a 4-state, 5-nation, 3-degree adventure. Quote, I spent the next few years studying, volunteering, and completing internships in Idaho, Ukraine, Utah, China, Georgia, the country, Romania, Guatemala, and Armenia. And, after that, you made it to the Midwest, completing your PhD, and moved to Champaign in 2011. What prompted you to leave? And I'm assuming, I didn't know how much you knew about all these places, but how did you choose them? Why did you leave? Why did you go? What did you do there? Like, this is just like, I'm just like,
Big list.
Any one of these, you were in Meridian, Idaho, and you ended up in Armenia and the Ukraine. Like, how did this happen? Like, just like some of the thought process here.
I mean, the first one was pretty easy. It was, so I grew up, again, Mormon boys serve missions. So, and you have a choice where you serve. So they sent me to Ukraine. So that was pretty early on experience. I went to 1 year of college, Rick's College, and then got my mission papers, which is basically tells you where you're gonna serve. So, I spent about 2 months preparing at a training center in Provo, Utah, and then shipped me overseas. And I was initially like really afraid because they told us a lot of the challenging things about Ukraine. So I remember being on the train going there, and I wasn't like, they would knock on our door to give us sheets, so we can sleep on. And I was just afraid to open the door because I'd heard so many scary things about people getting mugged. And anyway, I started out very naive, bottom line. So Ukraine was the first experience. Spent 2 years there, knocking on doors, talking with people on the streets, getting arrested, all kinds of things, right? So that was my introduction for sure too. both cultural difference, but also just getting out there, talking to people, getting turned down a lot. Who wants to talk to missionaries? Nobody. So I got rejected a lot, which is also a pretty good lesson in like not taking anything too seriously, being okay with failure, a lot of those things. So Ukraine was definitely exposure to that, but also it was a different culture. So in some ways, like it was a good intro to that, because when you don't understand someone's language, they're almost not as human to you, right? So it took me a while to like figure out how to speak Russian. In the meantime, everything they're saying is just kind of like gobbledygook. I don't know what they're talking about. So I don't see them in the same way necessarily as I would someone who is speaking English who I can understand, which is a messed up thing to say, except it's just the reality. Like I remember thinking like, why don't I see them quite the same? And I think a big part of it was the language and the cultural difference. So that was my first foray. That was the first 2 years. Then I got back after that, pretty quickly got engaged. That's its own story. And then decided that wasn't for me. But then, I'm trying to think of the timeline. I think then, after I graduated, then I went to Ukraine, Georgia. So I went back to Ukraine for my honors thesis. So we had to write a thesis for our honors thing, and I worked in an orphanage for 4 months. And so part of that was just like trying to get really embedded in the orphanage. This is one for like 14 to 18-year-olds, and I was 21 at the time, maybe 22. But anyway, they kind of forgot I wasn't an orphan, so I got to like really experience that. At the time, I spoke Russian pretty well. So yeah, I got to really get immersed in that environment. And then from there, I think after I graduated with my bachelor's, I always get the timelines messed up on these things, so I don't know. I think I went to China after that for a year. That's it. Yeah, because I think I was getting my MBA, or my MOB, my Master's in Organizational Behavior. Decided that wasn't for me, because it was basically an MBA with some social, organizational, psych classes, bumped in there. So I withdrew my application, had about a year off, and decided that I would go to China as a foreign expert, which in China, if you have your bachelor's at that time, you were, considered a foreign expert, which means you could work in a university. So I worked in a university teaching secretarial science, which is basically import-export business. A lot of secretarial science was also, how to write emails, how to respond to people's complaints, how to communicate. Yeah. So lived in China for a year. Yeah.
And were you famous in China at this time? Or?
Yeah, I forgot I told you. Yeah, I had my own TV show. It was kind of great.
How?
Yeah, I had one of my colleagues was an English professor at the university, and she had someone approach her about an after-school English class they were trying to get started, a television show. Her English was excellent. And she's like, we've got this foreign expert here. He's good looking, young dude. The kids would like get along with him. So yeah, they offered me this position to teach English to fake kids. They weren't fake kids. They all spoke English pretty well. They're real kids. But yeah, they filmed us. They filmed me basically teaching this small class of kids, and it became very popular. Was the number 1 rated show, I think, in the province for a good few months. I'm not sure. But yeah, I was famous enough that I couldn't ride my bike around anywhere. People would see me, point at me, talk to me, want to touch me. That was my first brush with fame, and I thought, man, this sucks. This actually kind of sucks, because you can't go anywhere, right? It's bad enough being like a white guy in China where there wasn't a lot of white people generally at the time, Americans specifically, but it was even worse when you have billboards with your face plastered across the city and everyone's watching your TV show.
I have to see photos of this, and I want to see the TV show.
What's it called? After School English was the name of the show,
starring
Ben Lough.
Ben Lough.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, Lough Jimmy was my name.
Lough Jimmy.
Lough Jimmy.
Lough Jimmy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Did it mean anything, or?
So Lough is kind of the last name. Doesn't really mean anything but the last name. And Jimmy is kind of like warmth and light. So it's kind of like.
Oh. That's your handle, right? On social media?
That's my handle.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, definitely makes sense. Yeah, I'm a warm, light guy.
Yes, you are. And handsome.
Apparently.
This is the coolest thing about listening to you is just you have just a treasure trove of interesting experiences and stories. Apparently, you've had jobs such as picking berries and working at a cheesecake factory. I'm just curious, out of all like the things that you've done, including your current role, what, maybe not the favorite necessarily, but if you can't pick that, what was the most memorable or unique kind of job?
The most unique job was probably, I mean, there was an after school, what was it called? Basically, I would see kids after they got out of school before their parents picked them up. A lot of these kids were really spoiled, and I think I learned a lot from that job. It was my first real job, so I worked at a daycare, but it was for older kids. So yeah, it was a really challenging experience. I lost my temper a lot. Like don't lose my temper anymore really that much, but at that time I was like, you gotta figure this stuff out because these kids are tough. I think that teachers meaning like teachers of grade school kids, have the hardest job of any person on the earth. I mean, those kids are tough. So I got a little taste of that. So I'd say that was probably my most challenging job ever, to be honest. But yeah, I picked raspberries as a kid, Idaho kid, trying to make some money, build hay. It was a cheese factory, not a cheesecake factory, though I like the idea of a cheesecake factory. But no, it was quality control for a cheese factory, Swiss Village. We just make sure all the cheese was up to snuff. I got so sick of cheese.
I think that's just wishful thinking on my part. I was hoping you worked in a cheesecake factory.
I mean, yeah, no. I mean, I'm guessing that's only a restaurant. Do you think there's a factory that actually makes cheesecake? I guess there's got to be, right?
Yeah. What was the worst? Anything that you really hate?
Yeah, I've had. Yeah, probably that same job that did after school. I mean, it was so hard. Those kids are tough. Yeah, I just don't really like kids that much. So
it's very challenging.
It was tough. It was very challenging. Yeah. I'm tempted to ask you the same question, but
what was my toughest job? I've only really had one job. It's awful. I'm just kidding, geese. I love it here. It's great. Don't fight.
I know you love it.
Yeah. Now, I've been a personal trainer, a librarian, startup founder. Yeah. I think I've enjoyed everything.
Yeah.
I mean, this job is awesome, but I think there was a time when I let iVenture define me. Mm-hmm. So just Mr. iVenture, and our colleague actually asked me like, what are you outside of iVenture? And I didn't have an answer. And I was like, it was a thing that needed to happen when I first came into the role, to understand everything, to become this force, to transform things, to really take ownership of it. But after he asked that question, I guess conveniently COVID happened, and I got a lot more time to not focus on operations and think about myself and get back to all the other things that I love to do. So now it's an aspect of my character and me, but it's not the defining part. Yeah. Not at all.
Well, you helped nurture some other people into the iVenture roles as well, which I'm sure is a new way of engaging with your role, but maybe not being as visible necessarily as you've been in the past.
Exactly. And that's been an interesting position. It's where I wanted to be all these years, but there are challenges to being a leader in that it's crazy how much visibility matters. So you could still be working hard, people don't see it, or like there's just other constituents that you're serving, and maintaining the right balance of order and just respect and responsibility. That's been an interesting challenge, but overall I'm very happy because now, since I'm not super dragged into all the programming and operations, I can actually chill out for a bit and think bigger, and like what we're thinking about and trying to do, some of those bigger initiatives, bigger partnerships. So yeah, that's been rewarding for sure. What's next for you, Dean Lough?
Hard to know. Lots of opportunities. I'm still young.
Are you the youngest dean?
I don't know.
I think you might be.
I might be.
Yeah.
There's lots of opportunities though, both within and without higher education. So, again, I have a pretty strong growth mindset. So for me, the question will be, do I still have things to learn in this job at this institution, in higher education? And if the answer is ever no, then it's kind of time to move on, try something new.
Yeah, it's been so refreshing to get to know you over the last couple of years, because sometimes where we are right now, it's just it's such a huge bubble, where a lot of people come in, this is their retirement job, or there's campus politics, and to hear you talk this way and like move at a different pace, and it's kind of interesting. So just, I guess, like a concluding question, which is, so what does this all mean to you? Like what's like, you talked about growth mindset, and I feel like you live simply but also pretty happily. So like what is this all like? What's the point of everything? I thought this is me asking.
Good question. Yeah, it's good. It's a good question. And I think it aligns pretty well when you think about what's next. Because for me, the grand purpose is, again, it's a lot of it's internal. So there's a lot of things we can do for other people, but I feel like a lot of what brings me happiness and fulfillment is the experiences I have every day. Meaning my senses, what I see, what I hear, what I feel, what I, it's just being alive, right? So a big part of what I think about when I think about how to prioritize what I'm doing is, how is it going to make me feel? And that doesn't just mean like emotions. I think it means, if I have a chance to go, paddleboarding out on a nice sunny day, out on a lake like I did yesterday. The reason I'm out there is so I can feel the sun on my skin and enjoy a swim in the nice warm water, and just kind of enjoy being outside for 2 or 3 hours. For me, that's what life's all about. It's living in the moment and kind of being happy where we're at. This is my dog squeaking in the background. She got a new toy yesterday at her friend's birthday party. Leo turned 7, her little dog wiener friend, and she got this toy that she loves. So I don't take any of it too seriously. I think life's not meant to be taken too seriously, and so many people do. So I think that's where people get stuck and hung up, is that they just take life too damn seriously, which should really just be enjoyed.